Welcome back to Histories and Mysteries with me, Sally Toole, and my husband Mark. This time around, we're going to do something a little bit different. I was looking over some of my still shots of the encounters I've had over the years of meeting some of the stars and some of the background workers from The Walking Dead. So I thought you guys might get a kick out of hearing some of these crazy stories of these random encounters with the famous. One of my favorite stars was not a human. Can you guess? Yep, it was Dog. Norman Reedus' character of Daryl Dixon had a dog on the show, and what a great animal it was. He is a Belgian Malinois. People think he's a German Shepherd, but that's not correct. And his real name is Seven. The first time I met him, he wandered into a shop that I was working in, sat, growled on command. I met his trainer. It was really a cool encounter. And then, on another occasion, I met Dog as well. Or should I say, Dog met me. So it was a super stormy day, and I was taking a tour group out early on a Saturday morning. Well, lightning struck as we were walking down one of the streets a bit far away from downtown shop where we would have been able to get in out of the storm. So I dashed up onto the porch of a house lovingly known as the Coma House. It's owned by the mayor of Sonoy, and so he was gracious enough to let the tour group hide from the storm. As we were calling around trying to get rides back up to town and get out of this stormy weather, in front of the house pulled up a van. I didn't know exactly what was going on, and then a voice from the van called out, "Hey Sally, I see your tour's gone to bleep." Yep, he said a little curse word I won't repeat here. And I thought, who is this telling me my tour has gone to bleep? And I looked over, and the van door slid open, and out popped a beautiful Belgian Malinois who I knew to be Seven, the dog from The Walking Dead. The tour group was ecstatic as he bounded toward the front porch and came right up to me and sat down. I told everyone, "This is Seven. Let me introduce you to one of my favorite actors on the show The Walking Dead." And yep, he's not a human. He's a canine, but he is an awesome guy. And I've been told that he's one of the only actors that always gets on his mark and always listens to directions. So here's an image from the day that Dog saved my tour from the terrible storm. Thanks again, Seven, and to your master as well. That was a super cool encounter. Nope, that's not the real Norman. Haven't met him just yet. Keep watching, though. So the very first famous behind-the-scenes person from the Walking Dead television show by AMC that I ever encountered was Greg Nicotero. It was another lucky Saturday morning tour for me, and I was touring a group, and I looked over and I thought to myself, gosh, he looks familiar. And a couple of the people in my group agreed with me and said, "I think that's Greg Nicotero." And I saw him sort of turning his head listening to my tour. And I looked and made eye contact with him, and he came on over and he said, "I was just listening to see if you were getting your facts straight." And apparently I was, so that was a positive. And he stopped and took a group picture with my gang of tour guests who were absolutely elated with this. And then, of course, he allowed me to get a picture with him, and here's that image. Now, Mr. Nicotero did tell a cool behind-the-scenes story about when Andrea is killing a walker up the street in the fictitious town of Woodbury, Georgia. And that walker that she was taking out was actually Greg Nicotero. You know, he likes to show up on the show in full walker garb, and he's highlighted in several famous scenes of the show. Well, he was telling my group all about that day of filming, and he said that the actress, Laurie Holden, who was playing Andrea at the time, wasn't supposed to hit him quite as hard as she did on the set, and it gave him quite a little bruise and a bump on the noggin. But how fun was it for everyone to hear this tidbit from behind the scenes? And of course, that wasn't the only time I had an encounter with Mr. Nicotero. It was on another occasion when the car show was in town, and he was walking up to town to check out all the antique cars and probably to go to the farmer's market as well, when he stopped and told my group about a behind the scenes tale involving the very gate in front of which we stood. The scene where Michonne latches the walls to Alexandria and rips the face off of a walker. Well, they had to do the take several times, and Greg said they kept having to glue the guy's fake, scary zombie walker face back on to do another take. And that was pretty funny to hear all about that. And he was very gracious that day to take this selfie with me. Nope, not Norman yet. Keep watching, though. Now, on this occasion, I came out to start a tour, and the group was talking to a very beautiful woman who seemed like she had a lot of extra makeup on. Well, look, that was Paoli, who plays the princess on The Walking Dead. She was talking to my tour group, and I said, "Hey, you going to take my tour?" She laughed and said no, she was really hungry, had been on the set all morning, was ready to go wash the makeup off. Her hair, funny thing, was just as stiff as it could be from all the hairspray they used on the set. She said she was ready to eat something and go home and jump in the shower. But she did take a moment to take this group picture with us. And so there we are with the princess. So in this picture, you see young Kian Spiller, who played young Herschel in season 11, Maggie and Glenn's son. Well, he was wandering around Sonoy with his mom one day, and he came into our shop and saw a walking stick that said, "Little Pig." And he laughed and he told us, "Hey, this is what Jeffrey Dean Morgan calls me on the set. I've got to have this." And so with his own little debit card, he purchased the walking stick. When he reached in his wallet, funny little story, he pulled out from underneath his shirt a hedgehog. Yep, he has a pet hedgehog that he kept with him on the set, he told us, which was kind of cool. And here I am pictured with young Kian Spiller, who did play young Herschel, Maggie and Glenn's son, on season 11 of The Walking Dead. Oh yeah, fun little side note, here's my family meeting Groot. Now, I met Lynn Collins, who played Norman Reedus' Daryl Dixon's girlfriend on the show Leah in the later episodes. Met her on several occasions in Sonoy. This shot is when she graciously posed with the tour group. Well, I cross paths with her a few days later after she was leaving a wine tasting. She came into the little shop where I was working in Sonoy and asked to use the ladies' room. I said, "Of course you can, of course you can." And she came and kissed me on the cheek. Of course, she was a little tipsy that day, but we loved having Lynn in Sonoy. She lived there for quite some time, got to meet her son, and it was really fun to have her in town all the time, and she was always very gracious with the tour guests and the tour guides. One morning while in the Woodbury shop, we crossed paths with the actor who plays Tomas, Nick Gomez. He's a really nice guy, still friends with him on Facebook, and that is the scene. He's the one who Rick Grimes split his head open with an axe. Pretty gruesome scene. He was one of the prisoners in the early seasons of The Walking Dead. Here's a cool little meeting. This is Miss Sonia Thompson, and she was what was considered a hero walker, and also her image was used to advertise The Walking Dead for many years internationally. Now here's a picture of her looking pretty scary on the set, and here's a picture of her looking pretty scary at our ghost tour up in Lula recently, just in October of 2024. But she's just as nice as she can be, and she's shared many behind the scenes stories for our guests up there in Lula. One particularly was the fact that the contact lenses that the zombie walkers have to use are very, very uncomfortable, and they are really ready to get those out of there even after 15 to 16 long hours of filming. So another surprise guest up in Lula this October of 2023 at our Lula Legends and Lore Ghost Tour was a gentleman named John Cooper. Mr. Cooper worked behind the scenes on The Walking Dead not only as a set decorator, but also as a performer. He was a hero walker and was also a human that was tossed to the walkers in one scene when Michonne and Rick toss him to the walkers to protect themselves. Now, as the walkers are chewing him, blood is spewing from his body, and he said in that particular scene there was a behind the scenes guy, a set guy who was underneath the porch, literally with a pump, pumping fake blood out of him for that particular scene. Mr. Cooper and Sonia joined us up in Lula and did share of a lot of cool behind the scenes stories about the uncomfortable eye contacts and the cool stuff they had to put on for bites, and also how if you ever see a zombie walker chewing what looks like flesh, hey, that's just barbecued chicken. Tastes like chicken. Apparently zombies do. All right, so this is one of the craziest stories. Here we're really getting into the meat of some of the biggest stars that we ever met through The Walking Dead. There is my fellow tour guide, Edie Welling. She is with Michael Rooker. But it was sort of an interesting day. Let me tell you how this happened. She and I both had groups out, and it was pretty rainy, and we were heading back up to the shop to get everyone out of the rain when someone said, "Hey, Michael Rooker just went into the Mexican restaurant in downtown Sonoy." What? So we decided, should we bother him or not? I said, you know what? It can't hurt to ask. So I went inside the restaurant, and he had just sat down. He had not even gotten his food ordered yet. And I said, "Excuse me, sir. We've got a bunch of fans right outside, and it would make their day to just snap one little picture with them." Well, with that, he looked at me, and he grabbed the necklace of the gal, probably one of his relatives, I suppose, who he was out to lunch with. And at the end of her necklace, she had a finger on the end of the necklace that was in a flipping the bird type of a scenario. He grabbed that off the necklace and pointed at me. So basically, Michael Rooker flipped me the bird. And then I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Thank you anyway." And with that, he goes, "Nah, I'm just kidding. Come on, let's go get a picture." And he went outside and I had the camera and took this group picture of him with the gang. And I was so excited and so thrilled. And as he walked back to the restaurant, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, you weren't in the picture. You didn't get a picture with me." I said, "Oh, it's okay. Thanks anyway." And he grabbed my phone and snapped this selfie. So that's my encounter with the famous Michael Rooker, who flipped me the bird, but I still got my picture with him. All right, here we go, getting to some of the big stars. Yep, that's Jeffrey Dean Morgan with me at the Woodbury shop. He had his son, Gus, there to sign the famous wall because Gus was a walker in season 11. And a funny story is I had already met Gus previously with his mom. The whole family came into the shop, and I did not recognize, I did not recognize Hillary Burton. Hillary had a mask on, as did everyone. It was at the tail end of the COVID pandemic situation, and most people were wearing masks. And I didn't really recognize her. I knew that she looked very beautiful and very well taken care of. And I did happen to ask, "Hey, what are you doing in Sonoy?" And Hillary said, "Oh, my husband's here with work." Yeah, boy, was he. And she was there as well, filming the episode Here's Negan. And here's a picture of that house and in the backyard of the Negan house, which is still in downtown Sonoy. So I had already met Gus on that occasion. We talked about ghost stories before. I didn't really recognize Hillary, unfortunately, until later when there was an Instagram post of her image with their daughter, George. And George had the same little pink fuzzy jacket that I had made a comment on when they came into our shop, and that's when I put two and two together. But Jeffrey Dean Morgan was gracious that day and did pose with myself and several other fans in the downtown Woodbury shop. Here's a cool little side note. We went to the Tower House Brewery in Gay, Georgia, and watched this episode of The Walking Dead where Eugene and the princess are looking in an old building and they go up that stairway. Yep, that's a brewery in Gay, Georgia. You can visit there too. Kind of cool to watch the show in the location where it was filmed. Before we meet the biggest star of The Walking Dead, here's a couple of behind the scenes from filming days in downtown Sonoy. Of course, that's Outpost 22 of the Commonwealth, and in through the gates are coming some of the vehicles sent by Pamela. Alright, here's my first meeting with Angela Kang and the first time I crossed paths with Norman Reedus. Here's a cool picture for you guys. This is in the alley of Sonoy. He and Angela had been having a private lunch in the back of Nick and Norman's, the restaurant that he shares ownership with Greg Nicotero in downtown Sonoy and several other locations across the country as well. Well, they snuck out the back to head to their cars, and I happened to be walking up the alley at the same time, and they graciously posed for this picture with myself and some other fans that were randomly walking up the alley. Well, I was so thrilled to just meet Angela and Norman. I thought, wow, that's cool. I've met Norman Reedus. But it gets better. So here's the coolest story for this whole video, guys. This is the coolest of all. My special encounter with Norman Reedus. So it was a Saturday morning 10 o'clock tour. I had my lucky orange sweatshirt on once again. And up the alley, I see Norman in one of his cars that I did recognize. I told my tour group, hey, that's Norman Reedus. And as we looked up the hill, he rolled his window down and waved. And my fans, my tour guests, were snapping pictures, and were just thrilled at the fact that even at a distance, Norman Reedus had taken the time to wave at the tour group. Then his car went down the street and away from where we were standing, and we were all super thrilled with even just that encounter. And then it got better. Oh boy, did it ever get better. We were talking about, isn't that cool that we just saw Norman Reedus, when suddenly we hear that muscle car rev its engine, turn around, and he made a beeline straight for us. Pulled up right in front of my tour group. Yep, there he is in his cool car. He let me give him knuckles. I told him thank you so much for stopping. It was so gracious of him to do that. Said he couldn't get out of the car because the studio was still on a lot of COVID protocol as far as him interacting with fans. So he stayed in his car, but he did allow us to take these pictures. Now, it occurred to me after this encounter how awesome it was that Norman Reedus, even though he was driving away from town, he took a moment and thought, I'm going to go make that day of not only the tour group, but this tour guide as well. And he did. It was super gracious, and it's a story I'll never forget. And if I ever happen to cross paths with Norman again, I'll tell him thanks again, because that was some special moment. Well, I hope everybody had a great time hearing these behind-the-scenes stories of my random happenstance encounters with the stars of The Walking Dead. Really some fun stories. I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Be sure you like and subscribe to our channel. It helps us out so much. Also, hey, I do something fun at Christmas. I make these really neat Daryl wings, and they're cool little ornaments. They're very thick wood, and if you'd like to order some, leave a comment and we'll get some shipped out to you ASAP. Thanks again to all of our supporters, Beaconberry Farms, Jim and Marilyn Greer, Lula Mercantile and Vintage Shop, Will Amrich, Ryan at WQEE FM 99 FM in Noonan, and all of the other folks who support us. Be a supporter, send us a comment, let us know how you'd like to help us out to bring more histories and mysteries to life.